And today is still the 10th Wednesday in August, 1994. And I am speaking with Ms. Tommy Ryder, Ms. Ruth T. Ryder.
Right, my friends call me Tommy.
Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes.
What does the T stand for, Ms. Ryder?
My maiden name was Thompson. And I got the nickname Tommy when I joined the W.A.V.E.S.
Really?
Right.
Well, I'm here wondering if you would share a little bit of what you remember of your experiences during the World War II era with me. Were you a member of the W.A.V.E.S?
Yes. I enlisted in August of '43.
What were the W.A.V.E.S?
Well, it was a women's organization. Free up a man for duty overseas or to fight. That was the propaganda. That was what was given to us. You know, join the W.A.V.E.S, all the posters did, to free a man for duty overseas or on shipboard, because W.A.V.E.S were not allowed on shipboard at that time. I believe they are now.
Was that an abbreviation?
Yes. I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that. But it was a voluntary emergency, let's say W.A.V.E.S, or what was the A for? For voluntary emergency service, W.A.V.E.S. Yeah.
Where were you during those years?
Well, I had finished college at Milledgeville in '42, and then I taught first grade at Thompson, Georgia for a year, along with 2 or 3 other graduates. And of course there was a lot of propaganda at that time. They were trying to enlist women. And actually three of us who had finished USGW and gone to teach at Thompson enlisted in the W.A.V.E.S that summer. We had come through the Depression years. I had not traveled outside the state of Georgia to any degree, and I must admit that I was not altogether patriotic in that I thought, well, this was a good opportunity to see some of the country and to have some other experiences. So I said to myself, after I taught first grade for a year, there's got to be more to life than this. So I joined the W.A.V.E.S. I went to Hunter College in New York for boot camp for 8 weeks of training. Then I was interested in anything to do with the Navy Air Force. I wanted to be around planes, so I wanted to either become a control tower operator or a Link Trainer Instructor, and they said, oh no, you can't do that. Your southern accent won't work on the microphones. But I sort of had the ability to pick up the speech of those around me, and I chose to go to Link Trainer Instructor School in Atlanta. So I came back to Atlanta, and there I was chosen to be an instructor in the instructor school. And I said, I didn't join the W.A.V.E.S to stay in Atlanta. And they said, well, we'll send you to Pensacola or Corpus Christi. And in those days, those were considered not desirable stations because I guess there were so many people there. So I stayed in Atlanta, and I explained when Jenny Ruth asked me about doing this that I really feel guilty now, because it was at that age, I had just turned 21.
In what year?
1943. Had my birthday in August, and actually, when I first enlisted, I had to get my father's permission because you had to be 21, and at that time I was only 20. But my birthday was on the 7th, and I actually was called up on like the 11th or 12th of August, so I had turned 21. But it was a fun time for us. We really didn't think about or realize the terrible, terrible things that the guys were going through who were actually in battle. If you've seen the old movies of the 40 era, the music was wonderful, and we were raising money, buying war bonds, selling war bonds. We had a chorus at the Naval Air Station, and we sang at WSB, and we could leave the station to go bowling or various things, and we took buses into the city. Riches sold the uniforms, and we really just had a great time. We were teaching instrument training to young pilots by using a Link trainer, which was invented by Mr. Link in New York. And we had on the desk a crab which traveled along a map and followed the route. The Link trainer simulated an aircraft in that these young men would actually get vertigo because they were closed in. You climbed into this little plane that worked on a system of bellows, so that when you lowered the left wing, this bellows collapsed and raised it, and then when you pushed on the right rudder, all these bellows worked to simulate flight, and actually they didn't go anywhere, but they felt as though they were flying, and they were enclosed, so they had to learn the instrument procedures or the instrument approaches to the various airports. Each station had sent out a radio signal with 4 arms, but in order to find the signal to home in to the airport on instruments, they had to learn, they were almost like geometry procedures. You had to take a certain heading, then make a 45-degree turn to intercept the radio signal, which was in Morse code, and they go da-da, 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 and they home in then on that particular beam to the airport. In learning the procedures, they also had to master the voice procedure and fly the plane at the same time. About the only instruments that were in these Link trainers were, we were concerned mostly with the compass, the altimeter, and the gyroscope, the artificial horizon. And so a lot of these guys, if they flew at all, had flown by the seat of their pants. And so when they couldn't see out, it's really disturbing. You'd think you were headed one way or that you were in one position, and actually you were not. And so they had to watch this little horizon and gyroscope in order to maintain straight and level or to ascend or whatever. We also set up at the Naval Air Station an air traffic control center. We had a sailor who had worked at the air traffic control center at the Atlanta airport who helped us set it up, which simulated the one at most airports. We had little strips of paper for each flight, incoming flight and outgoing flight, all various altitudes. And so we worked with that to help the students understand the control problems. Also, many of us, they were training in twin-engine Beechcraft, and they would take a wave along in the aircraft, and they'd take like 3 to 5 planes to practice these instrument approaches. And they would be what we call stacked. You would have the lowest one would probably be at 1,000 feet, another one at 2, another one at 3 and 4. And then the wave in the aircraft would use the microphone to clear each one down for the instrument approach to a certain fictitious airport. And so he would practice his approach. When he finished, we'd clear him to the top of the stack. He would go back to, say, 6,000, and then the next one would go down. And that way, of course, we had a pilot, the instructor, pilot in each aircraft, but the WAVE went along to have the students practice the voice procedure as they practiced the instrument procedures. But it was great fun. We just had a wonderful time.
Where was the Naval Air Station in Atlanta, was it?
Out in northeast Atlanta. I'm trying to think of the name of the hospital. There's a big Army hospital right near it. It was just past Oglethorpe University.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where that is?
Mm-hmm.
And now, well, a friend just told me, who lives in Atlanta, told me the other day that the last of the old barracks had been taken down. Some of the barracks were there and were being used for other purposes, but it's no longer there.
You mentioned that you had gone to college in Milledgeville.
Yes, it was
Georgia Women's College, was it?
It was Georgia State College for Women at that time.
Where did you grow up? Where were you from before that?
I was born in Madison County, up near Rogers Mill. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Went to school here all my life.
Were your family working a farm there, or?
Well, actually, my father's a carpenter, but he worked as a carpenter in order to earn the money to buy the fertilizer for the farm. He didn't really like the farm, but he did run a farm.
Do you remember when Pearl Harbor happened, December 7th,
yes.
41?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I was home for the weekend and from GSC. I graduated in 42, but I was at home for the weekend, and my father and I used to sit in the hall of the house and listen to the radio. I used to like to listen to the boxing with him, and we were listening to the radio. He was sitting over there on one side of the hall and I on the other when he heard that. Yeah.
How would you travel between Milledgeville and Madison County?
Bus, either by the Greyhound bus, or if I had to take my trunk or something, my father took me there. He always had a car.
What did you study? Education courses
right.
in Milledgeville?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Elementary education.
And as a WAVE, you were working at the Naval Air Station as well as throughout the city. How long did that?
No, I just stayed at the Naval Air Station from the time I went there after the 8 weeks at Hunter. I came down to Atlanta and stayed there as an instructor in school until finally I decided to be discharged. Considered making a career, and finally I decided, well, it'd probably be best just to get out while everybody else was getting out. And then I thought I might go back to school and take my master's. But as it turned out, I took a job at the Atlanta Airport as a Link Training Instructor in a private flying school there, and met this guy and got married.
Was that what I know as the former Hartsfield Airport?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The previous location?
Right.
Lived in the other family members who
yes, my brother was a sergeant in the Army Air Force.
Mm-hmm. Where was he during those times? Is he still alive?
Tampa, I believe. Florida. I think it was Tampa. He was in Florida someplace. Yes, but he did not die in the service. He died of cancer several years ago.
Do you remember some of the popular culture of those years? Some of the songs or movies that were popular? Can you remember what you were singing on the air at WSB?
Well, we sang, of course, patriotic songs
Mm-hmm.
at that time on the radio.
On a few bars?
Anchors away, my boys. And we had a WAVE song that we sang at counter melody. Waves of the Navy, there's a ship sailing down the bay. So while the guys sang Anchors Away, the WAVE sang the WAVE song, and it was a counter melody. It blended. Came out at the same time anyway. But we, we put on shows there and had parties on the station when you were on duty, and sometimes we had when a class graduated, then we usually had a big party at the old Georgian Hotel down Isn't that the one that's near the Fox?
It's right across the street from the Fox.
Yeah, that was one of our favorite places, yeah. But, oh, you know, In the Mood, all the old songs that, of the Glenn Miller songs, and Benny, what's his name, the clarinetist.
Benny Goodman.
Benny Goodman, yeah.
Did you go out dancing in Atlanta in those days?
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you have favorite spots or dancing?
Well, I guess the Grady in the Ansley, the one that burned, it was a great place. I remember seeing
those were hotels.
Nat King Cole in the basement down with the Nat King Cole trio. He was marvelous, yeah. That was great. And I only went back then to Tennessee to get discharged, so I just stayed. They called our base the Country Club because we did have a good time. And as I was saying, I really felt kind of ashamed because now that I have matured somewhat, war seems so horrible. And you think of the misery and the suffering that so many people have undergone, but at that time and that age, it was also different. But it was more fun than college to me because I went to a girls' college.
Oh, yeah.
So it was great. I had a wonderful time.
Were there things you remember being particularly short of, rationed items?
No, I remember my parents. I remember my sister-in-law wanted to go and visit my brother in Florida, and they patched up tires any way they could. You couldn't get tires, and she didn't dare go alone. My father went with her. I was not there, of course. I was here. But, and of course, my family always had chickens and pork and beef. And my mother always had vegetables and milk and butter, so forth. So actually, sugar, I suppose, was the thing that they had difficulty getting. But another thing, I don't know if anybody mentioned it, but you saved everything. Now we recycle newspapers in aluminum cans. That time, they saved used fat to make explosives, I suppose. But everybody kept bacon grease, any grease that was past using. They turned it into a center. And soap, oh well, you could use, my mother used to use grease to make soap. Yes, but it was, as I say, it was not a horrible time for me at that time at all. We had a great time.
And you were barracked at that Naval Air Center?
Yes, yes.
Wait.
4 to a room usually.
When you were released, and where did you go in Tennessee to
Memphis. Memphis.
Memphis. And would that have been after the end of the war or before?
Yes, it was in January 46, I believe.
Can you remember for me events like VE Day or VG?
I remember that a whole lot of us were out of uniform and at a big picnic in the park in Atlanta. And so that seems sort of sacrilegious now, after all, remembering D-Day and Normandy and everything. But of course, we were glad that it was all coming to a close. Felt victorious.
What did you think of FDR? Did you have an opinion about his leadership?
Yes, I think it was wonderful. I know a lot of people disagree with that. And I suppose the war was the one thing that finished bringing the country out of the Depression, as terrible as that seems. But when he came into the presidency, we had been through a terrible, terrible time. And somebody had to do something, and he did. He had a plan, which I remember that so many people were opposed to his controlled planting, but my father said, saw the logic in plowing up the unneeded cotton so that we could get a better price and so forth. So, yeah, I think he was a brilliant man.
When he died, Harry Truman took his place, and he had only appeared on the ticket in 1944. Did you know much about Truman? Did you have an opinion one way or the other about Harry Truman?
I can't recall that I had a great, I thought about him a great deal. I did support him, and I read some of his books, and I visited the Truman Library, and I think we need more of old Harry, to tell you the truth. The buck stops here. He may have made some mistakes, but at least he had the intestinal fortitude to make a decision.
How long were you working as a civilian after World War II ended at Hartsfield?
Only about 6 months, because I got married.
Really? And in those times, you didn't work as a newly married woman?
No, I did not work well, we moved to another city, to South Georgia.
What town?
Albany. And my husband was flying an unscheduled flight daily from Albany to Atlanta and back. So I did start to teach again. Oh, I went to business school. I'd never had business school training, and I thought everybody ought to have typing and bookkeeping, etc., etc. So I took that. I didn't know anybody there, and for $9 I could take this business course at a vocational school. But before the year was over, the lady who was managing the school learned that I was a former teacher, so she enlisted my talents. And before I finished that year, I started to teach, and I taught there the following year. And by that time, I was expecting my first child, so that ended my teaching career for about 12 years.
Would you tell me something about your children?
Well, we had 2 sons. Rick was born in 48, and Art was born in 51. One went to Georgia Tech, the other one went to the University of Georgia, so they like to argue about that. Rick lives in the house in which I grew up, and it's wonderful to have him and his 4 children and his wife nearby. I enjoy them. And my younger son, who went to the university, is a dentist who lives in Orlando, Florida. He has 2 little ones, very young children, and I enjoy them too when I get to see them.
When did you move back to Madison County? I understand you've been teaching here.
Yes, we came back to, let's say, 1958. And then I taught in 1959 until I retired in 85.
And what grade did you teach?
Well, actually, when I came back to Madison County, special education was coming into its own, and Madison County did not have a special ed teacher. I had not taught for 12 years, so I needed to renew my teaching certificate, and at their urging, I agreed to take 2 courses in special ed to get a temporary certificate, and I initiated the special ed program in this county.
And that was 1959?
Right. No, 1960. In 1959, I taught for a combination first and second, and it was the following year that I started the special ed program.
I understand. Where have you been living since you moved back to Madison County?
Well, my family gave us a lot, and so I live on the property on which I grew up.
That's wonderful.
Lived there since we moved there in 1927.
What was the most difficult thing you had to deal with during the World War II years?
I suppose 2 weeks of mess detail. I can't really remember anything that was terribly difficult, but I do remember that I was on 2 weeks of mess detail in Atlanta, we were working in the junior officers' mess, and they brought out huge tubs full of shrimp, and they said, clean these for shrimp cocktail. We did. And it was 12 years before I could eat shrimp.
Was there anything you were particularly afraid of during those times?
No. Can't remember being afraid of anything.
Was there any discussion in Atlanta during those years of infiltrators or the Bund or espionage?
Well, we always thought of that the people on the coast might be in danger from the submarines.
The coast of Georgia?
Well, the Atlantic coast and the Pacific coast. But we did have occasional blackout drills, air drills, but that's all. We weren't really afraid. You know, at 21, what are you afraid of? You know, unless you really have to face the bullets.
Do you remember certain headlines being announced or announced over the airwaves, like
Yes.
D-Day or?
Yes, but of course we didn't have the media that we have today. We didn't have television sets showing us all the horrors of war. That's another thing. And the movies only glorified the U.S. Forces. We didn't really. Propaganda was pretty well controlled.
If you were summing up your experiences for a younger generation, say an audience of students or college-age researchers of my generation or a future generation, how would you sum up, how would you have them remember what you lived through?
Well, I would say go to great lengths to avoid war, but some things are worth fighting for, and we thought we were making the world free for democracy and that we were fighting war to end all wars. That's all I can say, is that you do everything you can to avoid war, but sometimes you have to stand up and fight, I suppose.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with me today, ma'am.
You're quite welcome.